And welcome, Hoosier Nation, to our 92nd episode of the Hoosier Sound, where we are the official podcast of Indiana HQ. Our mission and goal is simple. We want to bring in-depth analysis and coverage for Indiana University sports to as many fans as possible across a multitude of modern platforms. We are recording this edition of the Hoosier Sound on Tuesday evening, June 11th, 2019, where I am your host, Noah Freeman. You can catch our live broadcast Tuesday evenings at 8:30 p.m. on our YouTube page or our website. If you missed the live broadcast, you can subscribe to our show for free on whatever platform you listen to podcasts. You can listen on your own time. Check out our Twitter and Facebook at the Hoosier Sound and at Indiana HQ. Subscribe and turn the bell on. All the information is in our website, indianahq.com. All right, Hoosier Nation, it is time for some sports talk. On the docket for tonight, unless something falls into Archie's lap, the Hoosiers have their roster for the upcoming season. We're going to break down the roster by talking about potential starters, different lineups, rotations, and anything and everything related to the 2019-2020 IU basketball roster. Here with me tonight, covering for my various activities that I had the past couple of weeks. Thank you guys for covering. I've got Nithin and Matt. Matt, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Just got a job offer, so
oh, there
I'm
you go.
Excited
Congratulations.
About that.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Nice.
Yeah, as I interviewed last week, which I have not found out about that either yet. So, but congratulations, since you were talking about your interview prep the other day. Nithin, how are you doing tonight?
Doing good. I mean, look, I'm not interviewing for a job, but I think I'm doing all right. As you can see, it's kind of nice and bright outside for those of you watching on YouTube. Look, I mean, last night, what an NBA Finals game. That was intense and crazy. So it's pretty good time right now. Stanley Cup Final Game 7 tomorrow. The Cubs are doing all right. So good stuff.
I was about to say, yeah, today or yesterday, NBA Finals. Today, the U.S. Women's World Cup, which was 13-0. Then
I was playing Minecraft. So excuse me. I got my job offer today. I was playing Minecraft. This is too much information. I was playing Minecraft today. I was like, I turned it on. It was like 3-0 at halftime. It's like, they won. Okay, it's fine. And then I turned it on like, 30 minutes later, and it was like 9-0. And I was like, what?
Yeah. The 10-point or 10-goal second half. Then tomorrow is, as Nithin said, Stanley Cup Finals. Thursday is NBA Finals again. So we're like right in the sweet spot of a great week of sports to watch, which, by the way, if you are not watching the Women's World Cup team, go watch them. They're just awesome to see, and it's just really cool. The next match will be on Sunday. But let's get into some Indiana basketball talk. First of all, disclaimer, this entire exercise, this whole episode is obviously dependent on health of the team next year. And of course, if Archie gets some sort of late transfer. So as of now, beginning to almost mid-June, we're going to assume that every single player will be healthy, even Jerome Hunter. We're just going to assume that he's going to be healthy and ready to go.
Hopefully.
Yeah. So, but let's start out with who we think is going to start at the beginning of the year. Then we'll see if there could potentially be a change part of the way or at the end of the season. We'll go position by position, even though we're obviously in more of a positionless basketball era. And that doesn't necessarily mean their role, but it's just easy for us to keep organized. So with our number one, Matt Nithin, is there going to be much discussion on who we think is going to start at our typical quote unquote number one?
I don't think so. Nithin, who do you have?
I think point guard Robert Finney, West Lafayette, Indiana, right?
Yeah. Okay.
I think that's everybody.
Yeah, I agree. So, what about our number two? Is there also, but at least as of now, especially the way he ended the season, do you think there's much debate on our quote unquote number two?
Yeah,
well, Matt, who do you have?
Okay. I have Devontae Green. But so you guys could have Al Durham, and I accept that as well. But
that's who I have. I have Al Durham. Okay. So look, I know it's going to be a little bit out of left field here. It sounds kind of weird. Why would you have a senior on your team not start? Totally understood. But something caught my attention earlier today. It's noteworthy to me that, Devontae Green's a guy who he put up big numbers in the NIT. I think we all remember how he did, especially with the extended NBA 3-point line. Who would have guessed that? As a starter last year, Devontae Green shot 34% from the field, and he only shot 35% from three. As a reserve, coming off the bench, he shot 44% and 44% from three. So in a day and age when, look, Devontae Green will undoubtedly play a lot of minutes this coming season. I just wonder if maybe he's best used coming off the bench. So personally, I think if Devontae Green's okay with it, I would bring him off the bench and start Durham.
I could see that argument.
I could see that argument too, but I disagree.
I disagree. I think our best creative guard, like shot creative guard, needs to be out on the floor starting the game. Like, how many times last year did we start a game with literally no offense? And we need our best offensive player out on the floor so we don't keep that trend of starting games down 10 and having to climb out of a hole every single game.
If that happens this year, whatever the starting lineup is, change it like 2 or 3 games later. I mean, you can't let that thing sustain and have another what was it, a 12 game losing streak or 12 out of 13 last year? That was rough.
I'm afraid if you put Al Durham in, you don't have a guard that can create their own shot. Like, Rob Fantasy's great and all, but he didn't show much promise last year about creating his own shot. Al's not going to create his own shot as well as Devontae can. With only 2 guards out on the floor probably this year, I'd be surprised to see Devontae not starting.
Yeah, and I also think if Devontae kind of gives up and understands that he's not going to be the guy that facilitates the ball very much, and he knows that that's going to be Rob's role, and he just lets the offense officially start and flow through Rob, then I think he's going to be able to create more shots instead of his just take the ball at the top of the key and do literally whatever on any given play, just pull something out of the hat that he could do. So I think it's going to end up being Devontae. But as we go into our 3 position, and this is where the positionless basketball starts to come in, because you could have a guard or a wing or a big or anything just at that quote unquote 3, which I think this is a big discussion for with, I'll start. Well, let's say, at least for the sake of this podcast, Nithin got outvoted. So we've got Rob and Devontae at 1 and 2. But that's what we're going to discuss at the 3. Who do we think is going to be at the 3? Because I think it could be someone like Al could be a third guard that potentially starts, but you could also have someone like Justin Smith come in. So, Matt, you discuss first what you think the 3 is going to be.
Oh, God, so much pressure. I actually think if he's healthy, I think our 3 has to be Jerome Hunter.
Ooh.
And that he'll be our small forward. I think the position fits him perfectly. Like, he came out of high school, technically a power forward, but he was training with the guards last year, and that just tells me small forward. Like, that has it written all over it. That is his position. The 3, whatever you want to call it, it's positionless basketball. That's fine. But as a shot-creating forward who can switch onto guards and guard them, like we saw him guard Romeo during the Cream and Crimson game last year, and then switch onto forwards, which is his main position, I think as a 3, our best 3 on the roster is Jerome Hunter. Yeah, my brain just had an accident. But yeah, is Jerome Hunter. I could see the argument for Justin Smith. I'm sure one of you will say his name. And I also see the argument for Al Durham, but I think Jerome's the best fit for that position.
Do you think that changes? Because I think at the beginning of the season, I think it's safe to say Jerome probably won't necessarily start at the beginning of the season right away. Right. So does that change at the beginning? Who do you think might go in before Jerome might be able to get acclimated with the program a little more?
Okay. Our best lineup has him at the 3. I think the third guy will be a guard. I think it'll be Al. And that's why I think you've seen us go after grad transfer guards like Austin Van Zyl, or he's not a grad transfer, but whatever he is. Looking at another guard, because I do think Archie's probably going to have to start with 3 guards, and then that leaves our only guard coming off the bench as Armand Franklin and VJ Blackman, which is less than ideal for guard depth. But I do think it'll be Al. So we'll be running 3 guards at the beginning, but our best lineup has Jerome Hunter in it, and I think that's what will end the season if he's healthy and can play.
Gotcha. What about you, Nithin? What do you think that quote-unquote 3 is going to be?
I don't know. I'm not too comfortable putting Jerome Hunter in the starting lineup just yet. We'll see. Hey, look, if he ends up being an impact player, I'll be the first person hopping and yelling and cheering. To me, it's Justin Smith. I think this is a guy who you need to commit to this offseason, get him ready to go, and have him be an impact player for this team game in and game out. There's no Romeo Langford anymore on the wing. There's no Juwan Morgan anymore in the post. This is a guy who's entering his junior year. He needs to be an impact player. Last year in wins, Justin Smith scored 10 points a game. In losses, he was a 6-point per game guy. If this coming year he can elevate his play both, every game during the season, I think that would be a huge addition to this team. So for me, Justin Smith is starting.
Before I even give my opinion, Coach Brian Tonsoni in the chat says Al Durham. So I think we're going to go with his opinion for the 3 already. But yeah. I think it's going to he's definitely the big tiebreaker. But I think it depends on, honestly, all of what Justin's play is, because I think it's hard to overshadow the kind of his Michigan State play, because if he can be like that, more consistent, it's hard to keep that on the bench, even if it's coming off of the bench as a role player. So I think if he can be like that, then it's going to be hard for Archie not to have him to start. But if he's just really inconsistent, that's going to be something that's just too hard for Archie to overlook. And we've seen that Justin in particular this year was a guy that Archie has sat and benched at multiple times during the season. So I honestly think it's his spot to win, but it's his spot to lose. And I could see both Al and Justin. And to play off of what Coach is saying in the chat, he thinks that Al is going to be the quote unquote 3 or that third guard in the lineup just because of his shooting, and he has potential to get double digits in scoring. And we definitely will need that, especially with the 3-point line getting back a little bit. Getting pushed back some, and we just need scorers, like everyone obviously knows, losing Romeo and Juwan. So let's pencil in for now Rob, Devontae, Al. So we're going to start with a 3-guard lineup. The next position, officially the 4, is this something again that we're going to need a lot of debate on, Nithin?
I don't know. I'm curious to see what you guys have. I'm starting Trace Jackson Davis at the power forward spot. Look, it's 2019 in college basketball. Just because you're a freshman doesn't mean you need to wait your turn to start. Look, the Big Ten is brutal. It's competitive. I would throw Jackson Davis in there. He seems to have the coach's attention so far. I remember seeing Archie Miller comment last week at the Huber Winery event that Jackson Davis is a bit underrated offensively. That would absolutely help out in this situation. And when I look at Jackson Davis, I see a guy who can be an impact player. And there's going to be a learning curve. Allow him to sort of figure things out in the non-conference season so that once conference play starts, he can be a real dynamic front court guy.
Matt, any differing opinions?
Yes. I like Trace a lot. And I think he's going to be great by the end of the season. But I don't expect him to start straight out the gate, because we have somebody in Justin Smith who they're going to want to give some time to. And I think if you have the 3 guards out there and you're putting all this time in the offseason into developing Justin Smith, I feel like they're going to give him a shot to prove that he can play the 4 and that he can play and stay on the court. And if he can do that, I think it's going to be better for this team in the long run, having somebody like Trace Jackson Davis either start at the 5, which I think is his better position, or come off the bench and be a roamer, play a 4 or a 5. Just from a depth standpoint, that would be utterly fantastic. But I do think that for the start of the season, they're going to give Justin Smith the go.
Interesting. I like how we have differing opinions tonight, just like with Nithin at the 2 thinking it's going to be Al. I'm going to have to disagree with Matt, and Coach also disagrees. I think it's going to be Trace. I don't think for me at least, I don't think there's almost any question that Trace is going to be potentially the 4. I think it gets dicey, and we talked about health. This is assuming everyone's healthy, because if Durant is a no-go for at any point and Joey Brunk's not ready yet, then I think they start to slide positions down. But in terms of assuming everyone's healthy, I think Trace is going to be at the 4, because we do have some guys that are bigger that can play at the 5 and are capable of getting some starter minutes. So as of now, our lineup that we have picked out as of June 11th, Rob, Devontae, Al, Trace, and then at the 5, Matt, who do you think is going to be at the 5?
I think this is the easiest one we've had since point guard, and I'm going to go with our boy Deron Davis. I think our best lineups last year, coming off the bench, had Deron in them. I think he brings scoring, he brings toughness, he brings actually pretty good defense when he can move his feet really well, and he's not, he's 100%, not, stomach sick or whatever he was last year all the time. But yeah, if he can be healthy and stay on the court and get into shape again this offseason, I do think he's our best 5.
Any obligations, differing opinions, Nithin?
Matt, I agree with you, my friend. I've got Deron starting as well. I think, look, this is a big year for Deron Davis. I think even more so than his senior backcourt teammate Devontae Green. Deron's going to be team captain pretty much this year. That's not official, but that's just my observation. And he's going to play a big role not only on the court but off the court, helping the team as the leader. This guy has 12.6 rebound potential. If he can stay healthy, that's a big if. I think he can be a big help for this team. So I've got Deron starting at the center.
And we have talked about this a bunch of times about Deron throughout the season, that we think he's going to be a key contributor in terms of leadership on the court. We mentioned a lot of things throughout the season. Like there was one game where someone pushed Romeo onto the ground and fouled him really hard. And the first thing Deron did was come over and get in the guy's face and said, basically, you're not going to do that to my guy. And I think he's going to be just a huge presence, literally a huge presence on the court physically and in terms of leadership. And I think he can help equally on both of those sides of the ball. And if he can get back to his quicker, more nimble, less weight type of self, I think he's, of course, after health, he's just going to be a solid guy, because when you saw him come back, the offense just almost exploded. It was like there was just almost a missing piece to the puzzle, because he could just do a bunch of things down low that no one else could do. Now, of course, he has a lot more help this year than he did last year. Yeah, because we're going to have Race coming in, we're going to have Joey Brunk coming in, just and Trace, even him being able to take minutes at the 5 as well. He's got a lot more help, so I think that also gives him a lot less pressure. But when it's all said and done, I think Deron, if he is able to and healthy, he's going to be able to get the nod at the 5 most of the time. Now, going on to any particular different lineups as the season progresses, Matt talked about potentially Jerome Hunter developing and getting into the starting role, and I completely agree with that. I think he's a guy that has potential to get into the starting lineup. But Nithin, is there anyone else that you could see coming into the lineup? And if so, who do you think they might replace as we get into the middle and the end of the season?
Okay, so basically you're asking, as far as starting lineups go, who could replace people depending on how the season goes. Is that right?
Yeah. So if, for example, like we talked about, Al is the 3, quote unquote, right now. If Jerome progresses like everyone hopes he should, he could probably and potentially replace one of those guards for a starting spot.
Sure. No, well, first of all, Jerome Hunter, I agree with. If all goes well and he can be an impact player, then yes. I mean, there absolutely could be a matchup against a physical Big Ten team where Hunter gets to start over Durham. Personally, guys, in my opinion, I would have had Devontae Green come off the bench. So in my world, there are games where he could start instead of a guy like maybe even Robert Finney. If there's a certain matchup where you need some points, depending on how Finney has progressed offensively in his game, there might be a situation where Devontae starts instead of him. And then the other guy I'm keeping my eye out for is Joey Brunk. You mentioned him a minute or two ago, Noah. This is a guy who's played for Butler. He knows big power conference basketball coming from the Big East. He's an Indiana kid. If the change of scenery plays itself out the way we're all hoping it does, Brunk could be a starting player for this team come Big Ten or postseason time. So those are the guys I'm watching out for as far as potential starting lineup replacements down the line.
Yeah, I agree with Joey in a sense that we could see him have the Max Bielfeldt kind of transfer value of terms of coming in and producing immediately, at least part of the way through the season. But then I could also see, I think he's just going to have to get acclimated to the Big Ten. So we're going to have to see if he's able to do that. And if he is, that's great. But I think it's just a big question mark to see how and if and how much he can actually get acclimated to the Big Ten.
I don't see him making it in the starting lineup, though, unless something really bad happens to Duran. But I think Duran's just proven at the Big Ten level over the last couple of years that he could play. And I don't think Joey's going to be able to catch up to him, at least in a year's time.
Yeah, I also think
as far as Broncos, this guy was a top 100 recruit, isn't that right? So so personally, I think I'm a little bit optimistic. He's got a couple years of eligibility, that's for sure. You don't have that immediate urgency that's necessary with a 1-year grad transfer. But look, this guy he's got the physical profile. We'll just have to see if he contributes.
Yeah. And I honestly think also before I don't necessarily agree with him potentially starting. I could see before Joey starting, just even having Trace move down and putting Justin or Jerome or Race even in at the quote unquote 4 and having 3 guards and then a 4 and then Trace before Joey potentially starts. But if he does progress like that, good for him that we have that much depth that he's going to be able to go through. But if Duran's healthy, I honestly don't think he's going to be able to jump him.
Yeah, just to touch on one thing, Noah, you kind of mentioned Race Thompson right there in the middle of that sentence. That's a guy I'm very excited to see what happens this offseason because, no,
say that.
Fine, Matt, I'll let you take over.
Okay, perfect. Because I was going to say my guys to jump in the starting lineup, my first one was Race Thompson. Look, he's a redshirt sophomore. He's been here 3 years now. He'll be his 3rd year being in the program. Last 2 years he's been going up against in practice who we've talked about. Duran Davis. We also haven't talked about Juwan Morgan on this podcast. He's been working out for a bunch of NBA teams, by the way. Update. But going up against him in practice, that's been really good for his development, I'm sure. Getting him back healthy and getting more playing time and also being able to get warmed up into the season this year and not, missing 2 months because of a concussion is going to be really good for him. And he's going to be going up against in practice players like Trace Jackson Davis and Duran Davis and maybe and hopefully a much improved Justin Smith. And that'll just improve him so much more. And I think he's going to be a key player. And I think he could blossom. Look, he's a 3-point shooter in high school. He was known for his corner threes. That's something we were missing last year. And he didn't get to show much of it because I think he was a little bit out of shape and out of sorts and a little bit confused because it was his freshman year and his first time playing in the Big Ten. And you just threw him into conference play. And we're like, here, go. Which doesn't work out well for almost anybody. So I do think with an offseason under his belt, getting back healthy, being able to play, hopefully in the non-conference, knock on wood, and then being able to play in the Big Ten, I do think he might make a run for that 4 spot. And then somebody else I'd like to point out for the 3 spot that we didn't talk about is Demezy Anderson. We've been talking about shooting. This team needs shooting. This team needs shooting. Well, what if the shooting is already on the roster? Archie didn't trust him on defense. At times, Demezy looked like a very good prospect last year. I'll throw back to the Marquette game. I thought he had a great game in the Marquette game, barring some defensive lapses, but that he's a freshman, so you kind of get a pass on them. I thought he offensively looked fine. If he can fix that, he's 6'7", 215. Like, he is going to be a great 3 if he can just slow the game down. I feel like the game came to him a little bit too fast last year. You saw him rush a couple shots, force a couple things. But if he can slow it down in his sophomore year, I think he could make a push for the starting lineup. I'm not saying that he's going to eventually make it because I do think Jerome Hunter's better than him, and I think an improved Justin Smith would be better than him, but he will definitely be in the running for a rotation spot, definitely.
I think there's almost a 0% chance Tamizi gets the 3 unless he the starting role unless he has a Juwan Morgan type of progression from freshman to sophomore year, and I don't think he's there to have that huge of a progression. I think he's definitely going to get better, but I don't think he's going to start to be all Big Ten level.
That's fair, but I'm just saying, if we're going to talk about people making it into the starting line, I've got to throw his name in there because I feel like there's like 12 people that can play the 3 on this roster. It's just like this person's 6'7" and this person's 6'6", and we hope that this person can learn how to shoot. So,
and at this point, I was about to say someone might as well throw Armand's name in to potentially start because then you hit all 11 people. So
yeah, exactly. It's just like this person. We can just play 3 centers. It's fine. We'll just have Trace Jackson Davis, Duran Davis, and Joey Brunk start. It'll be great.
Yeah, but my point for that was we talked about realistically 8, if not potentially 9 people that have a good chance at starting, and whether that's good or bad for the team, it at least shows that this team is going to be very competitive with who's going to start and get minutes.
And it'll make practices great because everybody knows there's spots up for grab, and it'll make it more intense. Now, hopefully that doesn't lead to injuries. Please, God, don't let that lead to injuries. But tough practices and spots open and playing time available is a great thing for a basketball program. So,
I think that's a good point you made right there, Matt. Last year, it was pretty definitive that guys like Romeo Langford and Juwan Morgan would absolutely start for IU. This year, the only lock, honestly, I think is Finney. I don't know. Duran are close. But really, it's going to be competitive. There are starting spots open, and that's where that drive and motivation will separate certain players from others.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So there's great discussion on starters, which I think we could also potentially be very wrong by how this season could potentially go. As a good thing, people could blossom that we don't necessarily see. But let's move on to Nithin quickly. Who won the week this past week for IU sports?
Yeah, no. So no, a little bit earlier we were talking about the Women's World Cup and how the U.S. women's national team clobbered Thailand earlier today. There was some IU men's soccer news as well. Defender Jack Marr earned his second invite to the U23 men's national soccer team for their domestic summer training camp that will start coming up here. Marr is one of 2 collegiate players to be named to the U23 team, and this squad is preparing for the 2020 Olympics in Tokyo. So it's a pretty cool setup here. Marr was a freshman last season for the Hoosiers. He was a freshman first-team All-American, according to Top Drawer Soccer. He's an Illinois native, and he was the Big Ten Freshman of the Year. So the national U23 team, the U.S. soccer folks noticed that, and they said, hey, this is a guy who we want to include in our pipeline and help develop and help improve. And who knows, in the we might see Marr defending for the United States in the 2022 World Cup if things go well. I don't know. I mean, it starts in a tournament in a setup like this. So I wanted to give a shout out to Jack Marr. Again, he's going to be just a sophomore this coming year at IU, but he's already getting mentioned and called up to amateur U.S. soccer teams. So that's pretty cool to see.
Yep, and I'm even going to throw out just the IU baseball team since you guys started the MLB draft last week and didn't finish it, how they have a program record 10 Hoosiers were drafted into the MLB throughout the week last week, which is just incredible to see. But I'm also going to give Rob and Indiana HQ and the Hoosier Sound a shout out. And just to preview at least next week's episode, we've got Bill Murphy, the author of the Branch McCracken story, a great book that you can go on Amazon and get if you haven't already read that. We're going to be able to interview him next week to talk about his book on Branch McCracken, which is great. So stay tuned for next week. Put in your questions that you have for him that we're going to be able to get him on. But let's go on to and continue our discussion on the IU basketball roster. So let's go into some potential lineups. Now, we're not going to get too crazy with lineups, but let's talk about a few lineups. So Nithin, is there a specific lineup that you are intrigued to see this coming season with our roster that we have?
Well, we talked about starters for the first half of the show. It might even be more than half. But I'm curious about this bench unit that comes on for IU, because I think what might help IU as far as the Big Ten standings go and any sort of postseason play is the depth that this team has on its roster, which seems to be, cross my fingers, deeper than last year's group, and especially the first Archie Miller season a couple of years ago. So from a bench standpoint, the one guy I nominated for a reserve role, if he was good with it, was Devontae Green. So assuming you've got kind of a ball handling shooter out there, I'm curious if you can pair Green with a guy like, I don't know, maybe pair him with Al Durham, who, okay, yeah, he's a starter, but he's a longer perimeter guy. And then off the bench, you think your front court is Jerome Hunter if things go well, and then you throw in Race Thompson and Joey Brunk. Just thinking aloud, coming off the bench, I think it's a pretty solid 5-man unit, considering now this is Thompson's third year. As you mentioned earlier, Matt, and Joey Brunk transferring over from Butler. All of a sudden, if you're telling me that I've got a bench unit of Devontae Green, Al Durham, who of course would start, Jerome Hunter, Race Thompson, and Joey Brunk, I think it's pretty solid.
Yeah.
Any thoughts before you go into your specific lineup that you might like to see, Matt?
Yeah. I mean, I like our bench. I do think Al will probably be in the starting lineup. So you could put somebody like Jerome Hunter or even talk about Armand Franklin a little bit, even as a freshman. I think he's shown a little promise. But yeah, I think our depth is going to be much better than last year. And we thought our depth last year was going to be great. So, and it was, we're dealing with lots of injuries all the time. So,
yeah. Small ball lineup. I want to talk a little bit about a potential small ball lineup that we might see. And of course, small ball, you got 3 guards that we talked about. So it could be any combination of Rob, Devontae, Al, Armand, and potentially even Demizi. So you got 3. Even you could add 4 of those guys to put them down and get a small ball if you really want that guard potential lineup. But you could have 3 guards, maybe Justin or Jerome as your 4, and then someone like Trace or Race or something at your 5 that I could see as a small ball lineup. Do you guys have any things to add on for that small ball lineup?
Yeah, I really like that lineup. You take the 3 guards, and then I think you add Justin Smith at the 4 and Trace Jackson Davis at the 5. And Traces can hit like an occasional corner 3, and that just spaces or like at least in the mid range, and that just spaces out the floor so much. And it's wonderful to see, and have Justin Smith roaming kind of on defense. That's just wonderful. It's going to be interesting to see, on a side note, it's going to be interesting to see how the pack line holds up with a little bit more space on the floor with them moving the 3-point line back. Mm-hmm. I think it did fine in the NIT, but this is going to be a real litmus test of the pack line defense because there's a little bit more space. And yes, it's only a couple inches, but that's a lot of space on the floor if you think about it. So, yeah, I'm just really interested. But the small ball lineup is definitely going to be a thing. I'm sure we'll see it at least probably once a game because Trace can really play, and I'm excited to see him in a Hoosier uniform. So.
Yeah, and then let's move on to a bigs lineup. So I think we could see some combination of 2 guards, even if that second guard is Demizi, who is, like Matt said earlier, 6'7", which is a pretty big guard, at least compared to some collegiate guards. But 2 guards, your 3, Justin or Jerome, your 4, Trace or Race, your 5, Duran or Joey, which could be also a really cool lineup to see. What do you think about that, Nithin?
Yeah, it seems like IU has a big option at almost every position. And Rob Finney himself is pretty what's the word? Pretty stocky as a point guard. He's pretty muscular as a point guard. You can also throw in, if you don't want to even have Rob at that spot, Al Durham has shown that he can handle the basketball a little bit, and you're talking about a really long point guard in that situation. I'm curious to see how Demizi Anderson improves. I don't know if he's going to show starter ability. I don't know if he's going to end up being the worst guy on this roster. And I mean, that's a pretty wide spanning set of circumstances for one player. So this is a guy who he looks the part. I was able to see him play against Purdue and against Northwestern last year. He didn't necessarily put up the numbers, But this guy is, he's athletic. He can absolutely play with other guys in this conference. So if he can find his shot, all of a sudden you can pair Rob Finney with Anderson, and then like you said, the front court mixing and matching will be really fun to watch. Whether it's Hunter, Jackson Davis, and Brunk, or you throw Duran in there or Race Thompson in there. I mean, the possibilities are not endless, but close to them.
Yeah. And I think I don't think we'd necessarily see that, but even seeing a lineup with like Trace, Duran, and Joey on the court or something like that, that'd be really just funny to watch and see how how big the lineups were.
It's a little bit excessive, but hey, look, the good news is that hopefully right now, like we're doing, Archie Miller and his coaches are kind of talking about the different possibilities. This is when you can really figure things out, because you're not dealing with the stress of actual games to talk about just yet. So hopefully they're kind of mixing and matching and seeing how things work. And then when practice starts later on in the fall, they can really test some things out.
Yep. Let's keep moving on, because I want to get to this potential. And I think this is a good question for a good talking point. Close out the game. It's a close game at the end, whether IU is up or down. What kind of lineup and who do you think the 5 on the court will be for a close game at the very end of the game? Matt, give us your 5.
Oh, man. You got to have Big Shot Rob in there at the starting point guard. I mean, there's nobody else. That you guys can't argue that. And then I think you got to have our best shot creator, like singular shot creator, in Devontae Green from a guard perspective in there at the 2. I think our 3s probably for defense is probably going to be Justin Smith. I think if it's a close game, you got to have one of your better defenders out there. I think Justin Smith will be out there. I think the 4 has got to be Trace Jackson Davis for his passing ability. And then the 5 has got to be Duran. I think that's got to be the 5 out there on the floor.
What do you think, Nithin?
I've got a little trivia question for you guys. Hey, maybe you know this, but do you know who led IU last year in free throw percentage?
Birds chirping as this is bad radio with the silence, as clearly Matt and I don't know.
Yeah, no, I have no idea.
You want to guess, or are you just gonna let me talk?
I'm gonna say Al Durham.
Noah, you want to guess?
I don't know. I'll go with Al too. You
guys are both right. It was by a slim margin over Devontae Green, and a little and Romeo Langford finished in 3rd place. But Durham, I mean, it was 74%. But for the guy, I need the guy who led the team on the court in those crunch time moments. So I've got a close. I think I have the same lineup as you, Matt, except I'm taking out Justin Smith and I'm putting in Al Durham. Smith, as athletic as he is, hasn't really shown a real standout rebounding ability. So on that note, I think give me Al. I think he's a pretty good rebounder for his size as it is. He can knock down a big free throw or 2 when he needs to. So that's the only change I would make.
I agree with both. At the very beginning of doing this, I had Matt's exact same lineup, the same 5 and the same positions. But the only part, like Nithin, you touched on, I agree with both of them, because my only question mark was Justin, because I'll add into what you said, potentially just him giving up careless turnovers at the end of the game, which is something that you don't want, just depending on what kind of game he's having. And but Matt talked about athleticism, and that's one of the reasons I would have him in there at the end of the game. But and honestly, I also a question mark I had just to I'm not sure how he could potentially do is Duran Davis by the end of the game, just because depending on what kind of shape he's in, he's potentially a liability for speed, depending on whatever matchup where Indiana is specifically facing, and then possibly his free throws, because you talked about Al with his free throws, Duran on the other end. Now, he had a great freshman season of free throws, but it hasn't been great since, and we're not necessarily sure why that he hasn't been the free throw shooter that we've seen him to be. So if he can get the free throws up and he can get his feet back to nimble and his belly a little a little slimmer, then he'd be great there. But
But, on that note, Noah, I mean, even in the NBA nowadays, you're seeing centers kind of get phased out late in games, even really good ones, guys like DeAndre Jordan and Rudy Gobert. It's not just picking on Deron Davis. I think Davis will make an impact. It's just maybe in crunch time in the last couple of minutes, IU is in a close game, like I'm expecting there will be in a lot of them in Big Ten play this year. Maybe you don't have a big, center with some free throw questions out on the floor.
Yeah, exactly.
If Archie doesn't want Duran out there with my lineup, I'd take Duran out, move Trace from the 4 to the 5. I'd move Justin from the 3 to the 4, or maybe leave him at the 3 and maybe put something like Race Thompson in. And so you have Race Thompson, Trace Jackson Davis, Justin Smith. You have I just don't see Al being in at the end. I don't know what it is, but I don't see him, even though he's going to start. I just think our best lineup at the end of the game, defensive wise, is going to have Devontae or offensive and defensive wise, is going to have Devontae and Devontae and Rob Finney on the court. God, I'm like reading everybody's names and it's mixing me up.
I know. Yeah. I hope this isn't too hard to follow as we just think our thoughts out loud.
Yeah,
but
well, again, as I said before, this is probably what the coaches are doing right now. They're probably
seriously
brainstorming and.
Well, I'm not sure about that.
We haven't really even talked about Armaan Franklin all that much, and he's a guy who's referred to occasionally as his mom's quiet assassin. Is that right? So
silent assassin.
We're not really silent assassin. We're not even talking about him, and it is a guy who might surprise all of us this year. I mean, who knows? We'll see how it all plays out.
Hashtag my quiet assassin. That's what she had as. But no, we're getting to the discussion where I think we're going to talk more about Armaan. Just to close out this discussion on who's going to close out the game, instead of Race, what Matt was saying, I think I'd actually go where Nithin was going with Al. I just, like Coach is talking about in the chat, his shooting ability. I think that's something you just got to have, and giving him another year to keep potentially shooting the 3 and getting some of that in. And like Nithin said, he's great at the free throw line to try and close things out. I could see going a small ball lineup at the end, which, as Nithin pointed out, is something that that NBA teams are going through, unless at the end of the game, you never see a center unless that center can shoot the ball, just like someone like Gasol on the Raptors. You see him at the end because he can shoot the ball and space the floor. But we could keep continuing this for a long time. So let's get into.
Well, on that note, I do want people on Twitter and on Facebook, let us know what you're thinking, even in the YouTube comments. If you're watching this on Wednesday or Thursday or over the weekend or whenever. I mean, this is not something. This is something that we're going to be talking about for the next 4, 5, 6 months. So let us know what you think. I mean, where are we completely wrong? Which is
it's probably the case. So just let us know. I'm sure you guys will have recordings of me saying Race Thompson in at the end of the game, and then for some reason he has a not so great season, and they're like, "Look, Matt, look what you said." I'll be like, "Oh God."
Yeah. All right.
Well, no. So absolutely let us know what you think, and we want to hear what you're saying.
All right. So this episode doesn't go to 2 hours long. Let's go into some rotations. So basically, going to ask who is going to get all the minutes, and I think a better question with just how deep or at least how close in ability this team seems to be. Basically, who isn't going to get minutes, since Archie likes to do a 7 or 8, sometimes 9-man rotation. Let's maybe talk about those last 2 spots of people that might not get as many minutes as someone else. So let's start with we'll start with Matt at first. Who do you think is going to be at the bottom of the roster more than they aren't? Because I think we can agree that let's just take Demezy for a quick example. Maybe for half of the season he's at the bottom, but then he's doing great for the other half. So just in general, who do you think might be that 10th and 11th man rotation spot?
Okay, yeah, so we're taking the walk-ons out of this equation. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And since he does 7, 8, sometimes 9-man rotation, who's going to get the least amount of playing time?
Okay, I think Armaan will be down there at the bottom, and that's nothing against his ability. I just think the guards above him, either 1, have more experience, or 2 are playing their position. Like they fit the position better. Like, Rob at the point guard. And then I think the second to last person, so this one's hard because I've really I really like Demizi, but I feel like if I had to bet money on it, I'd put Demizi, but I'm really hoping I'm wrong. So, but I just don't see any other answer, really, than other Demizi Anderson. I like look through the roster. You got Joey Bronk. He's the only true center on the roster. I guess Duran's a center, but like Joey's even a little bit bigger than he is, or taller. Sorry. So like he's gonna get playing time. You look at Al Durham, obviously going to get playing time. He's starting last year. Devontae's going to get playing time. Jerome, if he's healthy, is going to get playing time. If he's not healthy, he's obviously going to be at the bottom of the rotation. Trace Jackson Davis, obviously going to get playing time. Rob Fisney, Justin Smith, Chris Thompson, all are obviously going to get playing time. So I think the answer's got to be Armand and Demizi.
Interesting. What about you, Nithin?
Yeah, this one's tough. I mean, like Matt said, there are definitely a lot of different options. Based on Archie Miller's comments a couple, maybe last week at the Huber's Winery event, I'm a bit skeptical about Jerome Hunter. I, at this point, thought he would be kind of ready to go. He would be fully invested in not invested, but fully involved in the off-season workout. Jerome Hunter seems to be a guy. I mean, Archie Miller just said last week, we are still far, far away from getting an indication as to where things are. So I'm a little bit concerned by that. So to me, I think Jerome Hunter's the big question mark. And then, yeah, Demizi Anderson's gotta step up, or else he's gonna find himself lost in the shuffle. That's a guy I'm keeping my eyes out for.
Yeah, and there are Jerome Hunter. Since we know nothing about him, there's a lot of speculation and basically conspiracy theorists of stuff that's going on, since we don't know anything about it, which we shouldn't. But there are some people that have looked into some things and think that Jerome is going to be more than okay as the season starts. And the big point that I wanted to take away from last week's episode of the Assembly Call is someone, at least on a podcast, finally said, why didn't Archie go harder on a 12th and 13th scholarship spot if he didn't think Jerome was going to be okay? Because if Jerome was going to be out for the season, that's only 10 people on scholarship, which is even for Archie a little low. So just some food for thought. But anyway, I have to agree. I think at least at the beginning, he's going to be limited and he's going to be at the bottom of the roster. And unless everyone wants to see Demizi grow, but I'm just not ready to see him getting above 10th and 11th man just yet. I really think his junior senior year is when he's going to be able to start stepping into the spotlight a little more. So especially when Devontae graduates and there's another quote unquote guard spot that sort of kind of opens up. But I think I'd be safe to say around Demizi and sort of kind of Jerome. I agree. Coach is saying Armand is probably going to be towards the bottom, and I'd have to agree. And like Matt said, it's nothing against him. I think it's just the way the rotations are going to work and how we do actually have a few different guards. And the only other part I could see is, I mentioned this earlier, is just potentially how Joey Brunk fits in. If he does great, like we see the potential in him, awesome. He's going to be in a lot of those rotational minutes, but we don't necessarily, since we've talked about how deep the front court is, we don't necessarily need him to be getting a lot of minutes. It's kind of like Evan Fitzner. We noticed by the end of the year, he was getting almost no minutes, and he was a big guy, even though that's not what Archie got him for. He was a big guy that they didn't end up using. So I think that could potentially be a guy that could be at the bottom of the roster, even though I definitely don't hope that he's towards the bottom of that. So I guess we'll see. And I think it's also going to change a lot throughout the season. We're going to see everyone getting minutes at some point. I think that's something everyone can agree on. But let's quickly, before we get into a great question by Coach from our comments in our YouTube chat, which, by the way, if you haven't joined us live at 8:30 Tuesday evening at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, come join us. We got some great chat, especially Coach the past few weeks has brought up a lot of great questions and points. It's nice to just interact with you guys on here on YouTube. But most impactful player, who do you think We'll give most impactful guard and then a most impactful forward for next year before getting into coach's questions. So, Nithin, who's your most impactful player for your guard and your forward for next season?
For me, my guard is Rob Finney. I mean, it's a point guard sport now more than it's ever been. So I think Finney's the most impactful guard. As far as forward goes, this is going to be kind of he's a wild card. I'm going to go with Justin Smith. I think he makes a surprising progression from year 2 to year 3 at IU.
I hope you're right. I'll give mine then, Noah, because I'm gonna take over as host. No, I'm kidding. I'm gonna go with Devontae because you're talking more impactful, and what is more impactful than a guy that has games where he's just like a ball of fire, and then other games where he's chucking up 30-footers for no reason. So I gotta go with Devontae for the guard spot, and then for forward spot, I'm gonna go Trace Jackson Davis. He's new here. And he's a new shiny toy, and I love new shiny toys. And he's going to be a wonderful addition to this roster. He can play the 4, he can play the 5. I love his passing ability. I think it's criminally underrated as a creator and what he did at Center Grove High School. So Trace Jackson Davis is my answer for that.
Okay. I'm going to say combination Rob, and then I'm going to go with Duran as a forward just because the kind of senior stuff, senior leadership, senior how he can just open up the floor and give an option if Indiana needs just a throwaway play where they don't necessarily know what to do. Just give it to Duran, go down low, and he can do basically what he needs to down at the bottom. But if you had to pick one person that is going to make or break this team, this one person is going to get IU into the tournament or get them out of or make them fail to reach the NCAA tournament for yet another straight season. Nithin, who's the one player that's going to make or break the team?
Oh man, I'm gonna go with Devontae Green.
You know, right. I'm gonna agree with you. I'm gonna go Devontae Green. I think this is his year. I think he's sat through 3 years of kind of disappointment and ups and downs. He's a senior. So yeah, he's gone 3 years of ups and downs, and he saw the ups start of his freshman year, some downs, the ups start of his junior year, and then some more downs. I think he finally finds a level playing field and is our most impactful player. I'll draw comparisons to a player that just graduated. He's not going to be at this level, but you look at a guard like Carson Edwards for Purdue, who now he was more consistent than Devontae in the previous season. And I'm not comparing him at all, but I'm just saying a smaller guard that can create his own shot can do wonders for a team. And especially if you have guys around him that help him out, I think he could be a star. So I'm going to say Devontae.
I'm going to go. Coach also agreed with Devontae, and I'm going to give some just a different example. And I really think this is a guy that could make or break this team. And a lot of people are probably going to disagree with me, but I'm going to pick Justin Smith. If he can solidify himself as just a really good wing, then it just opens up a lot of options for this team. Everyone has seen and talked about all those flashes of greatness that he's had, especially at Michigan State. And if those flashes are more present than they aren't, he could be a wing player that we haven't seen, and that athletic kind of player that we haven't seen since someone like Troy Williams. And if he is impactful and doesn't have as many slumps, if he's at the bottom, he's not having a great season. Sorry, I'm stumbling. If he's not doing very well and he's the part where he breaks the season, Archie isn't afraid to sit him. So that's just another player that won't be able to contribute on the roster when there's already only 11 people playing. You take out maybe Jerome for health. That's potentially, with Justin not playing well, that's only 9 people to rotate. So I think he's a guy that just really has potential to make to do wonders for this team, or just start dwindling down the roster, let alone just your normal season injuries that are bound to happen at some point. So he needs to be consistent.
Yeah, I want Justin to invest in a pair of contacts that turn every other team's uniform into Michigan State's uniform. So he plays like that every single time, because those 2 Michigan State games were he was fantastic. So
yeah. All right, let's quickly go into Coach's question. I love this. Juwan Morgan averaged 7.7 points as a sophomore, went to 16 as a junior. Who is the breakout guy that we are not going to expect? Matt, I'll kick it off to you first.
All right, well, I'm riding with my guy today. I'm going to go with Demezy Anderson. I think his shooting ability on this team and the fact that he got some playing time last year as a freshman is going to really slow the game down for him in the sophomore year. And as the season goes on, he's going to be a really good rotation guy, and he's gonna jump in scoring. So I'm gonna go Demezy.
Yeah, Justin Smith. I think year 3 is going to be a good year. Kind of like you mentioned, year 2 to 3 might be a big improvement for Demezy Anderson, Noah. I think that's what you're going to see with Justin Smith. Juwan Morgan, I think Coach said he was 7.7 points per game. Smith last year was 8.2. I mean, we're like right there. I think he's going to play a valuable position. He's going to get the quantity of minutes. We're just going to have to see if it's quality now on a consistent basis.
I'm going to say Race Thompson. I don't think he's going to get to 16 points a game, but I could see him going from 0 playing time that we've seen to contributing, maybe getting 7, 8, 9 points, being able to help bang down low, do those athletic kind of things. I'll let you talk, Matt. If not, I could also see Armand. No, sorry, not Armand. I'm talking. I was 2 A names. Al Durham. I could see Al Durham breaking out if he could find his consistent 3-point shot. Especially with the line being moved back. If we can get another guy that's able to knock down shots, because we could see flashes here and there, he could knock down some shots. But if he could just do it a little more consistently, I think Al Durham can get into double digits, and that's something that Indiana needs. What were you going to say, Matt?
I was going to clarify my statement. I'm not saying Demezy Anderson is going to score 16 points a game. I'm just saying he's going to take a jump in production. So that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, well, yeah, which is and a jump in production is him scoring at least a couple points every time. So
yikes, man,
yeah,
come on.
Right. Which is okay. That's what's supposed to happen as a freshman. You're supposed to have to be able to develop, and that's what we want to see from Demezy as that breakout player, which is what the question was. Yes. But that about wraps it up for a 90-second show of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you guys so much for joining us. We really appreciate your support. We will be back next Monday for another edition of the Hoosier Sound Off. Big thanks to our live audience and Coach for coming out and participating in the ongoing chat. Make sure to stay tuned through updates on Twitter at the Hoosier Sound, at Indiana HQ. We got a lot of great stuff going through there, a lot of updates. Visit our website, indianahq.com. All the information's there, great articles. And then subscribe so you can get those episodes right to your phone. Turn on the YouTube bell. It's all right there for you. We try to make it easy. Send your questions as the audience so that we can have them on our next episode, especially next week. Again, Bill Murphy wrote Branch McCracken's story. If you got any questions about him, he has done a lot of coached for a long time. He wrote a book on the 67 football season where the Hoosiers went to the Rose Bowl and stuff. So if you got a lot of questions on just anything related to obviously for those more old folks, Brian, we're going to give Brian a shout out for those older time folks. Any of those kinds of questions, send them our way. We'll get them next week, especially. We're going to put all that through Twitter. So make sure to get everything so we can ask Bill as many questions as we can. Most importantly, if you enjoy our show, leave us a review on iTunes or Facebook. Tell a friend, share our links, your support. That's really the main way how we like to grow this podcast, so we can try and reach more passionate IU fans such as yourself. But as always, thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we'll see you next time.
Peace. Oh.